in your bio, it says that you are a trauma-informed
Hmm.
mental health coach. What does that mean?
What does that mean? I love this question because I get emails all the time and requests for coaching.
Hmm.
And the first thing I tell people, I said, I want to make sure you understand the difference between counseling and coaching. Counseling is the unpacking. Counseling is the connecting of the dots. Counseling is about healing, understanding, and processing. And there is tremendous value in that. And some people are good with that because they're like, okay, now that I have nuance, now that I have perspective, now that I've been able to kind of reframe this and view this situation through a different lens, I feel better. And I feel like I can strengthen my relationships as a result. Coaching is, well, now that you know all of that, what would you like to do next?
I
And
think I need a coach
girl,
because
we will talk.
I have done all the counseling and
Mm-hmm.
I've done my best
Mm-hmm.
to implement all of the things that I've learned through counseling and therapy.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to adult all the time and to be left up to your own devices and you don't know what you don't know until you know it kind of thing. So
Yep.
I'm glad that you made that distinction between counseling and coaching. So
Yeah.
you are a coach.
I am a coach, and the trauma informed piece comes from. So, before I got into mental health, believe it or not, I was into branding and marketing. And so, what we now know as influencers, because there was this season where people were like, I want to monetize my gifts and I want to build a platform. And so, I used to coach people on how to do that, on how to build audience and all the things. And something that I started to notice was we have a sound strategy, it's very rinse and repeat. All you have to do is execute. And they wouldn't execute.
Why?
That is a great question. I said, okay, is it the strategy? Do I need to go back and look at the curriculum? Because I'm a college professor too. So we're always examining the curriculum and seeing what we need to change and what we need to tweak. And in a long roundabout way, I realized that it wasn't anything that was tangible. Everything that was stopping them was right up in here.
Mm-hmm.
And so self doubt, fear of success, fear of failure. And I'm like, okay, where is that coming from? Why are you telling yourself this story? And as I started to pull this thread, almost every single time it landed in some rooted in some form of childhood trauma through some experience, through some parental criticism, through some schoolyard bully, through some traumatizing event that happened on the playground at school. And that message from third grade was still on a loop every time they tried to reach beyond what someone else told them was possible for them. And so as soon as they got there, boom, sabotage, procrastination, stall. And so I said, okay, we let's pull back on the strategy a little bit. Let's talk about the trauma. And once we kind of navigate the trauma, then we can execute. And then that completely revolutionized the way that I teach. It completely revolutionized the way that I coach. It completely revolutionized the way that I do content because the core nugget of all of the videos that I post on all of my social media platforms is some form of trauma.
It's interesting that you refer to or mention the fact that when you peeled back the layers, when you pulled on the thread, almost always it was rooted in childhood trauma where they
Mm-hmm.
had received some form of criticism or, some form of bullying.
Yeah.
And when I think about my mental health journey, what I love most about my therapist is that we construct these plans of action
Mm-hmm.
to tackle certain issues. And boy, she's really great at this. But the latest thing that we have been focusing on, where a few years ago, if you'd said, Melyssa, inner child, focusing on inner child
Yeah.
work, I would have been like, "Get the hell out of here with
Like,
that
could we
BS."
not?
Like inner child, like, come on. And I was like, now I understand that we all have this inner child
Yeah.
that suffered some kind of trauma. A lot of us, it was especially Gen Xers, we were abandoned. In not in the way where it was intentional. It was just both parents entered
Necessity.
the necessity. Both parents entered the workforce. It was a specific time in which women were fed a narrative of you can have everything. And to a certain point, women wanted that. They
Yeah.
wanted to attain autonomy outside of the home. They wanted to attain more identifiers other than wife and mother
They
because
wanted
they
options
wanted options.
and some
Exactly.
semblance of financial independence.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So what I was going to ask you is, what does a perfect client look like or sound like to you? Who do you love that comes to your practice and you just like to sink your teeth right into their situation?
Somebody who's ready to do the work. Because here's the thing, there's something called radical acceptance. And I give credit to Dr. Deb Gordon, who painted this really great illustration of radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is, so I'm from Chicago, so I'm going to use Chicago. We have a lake and a river. Everybody, we got a lake and a river, okay? Very beautiful city. So you're walking down the river walk. It's a beautiful day. You got on some white pants, you got on some nice shoes, and somebody comes out of the bike path and bumps you ever so slightly, but it's just enough to send you into the river. So now you are in the drink. You are splashing around. You're, oh my God, you're coughing and you're sputtering. And you're like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this happened to me. Like, can't you look where you're going? And you're right. You didn't deserve that. It was the other person's fault. They should have been looking where they were going. Your outfit is ruined. All of that. You are right on the money. But baby, you need to get out the water. And so when you have not reached a point of radical acceptance, you want to be right about being wronged. And a lot of people love to stay there. They love to stay in the, and this is what happened to me, and this is what they did, and this is what they said, and once upon a time, and in a land far away. And I'm like, you're right.
Victim mentality.
Absolutely right. But I need you to take the next step because you are responsible for getting out of the water. And so my ideal client are people who are ready to get out of the water, who have accepted that the outfit is ruined, that the shoes ain't never going to be the same, that you may never get an apology from the person who drove past on the bike to say that they bumped you in the water. You may never get that, but you're ready to heal and you're ready to move forward. And so people who are ready to take on that step, and for the record, it does not absolve the other person of what they did. Yes, they did all of that. They said all of that. And those consequences are very real. At the same time, they can't be lasting if you want to move forward and do the healing work. And so that's my ideal client, people who are ready to get out of the water.
What are your thoughts on closure? That made me, why I ask you that is because when you were talking just now and you're talking about people who express having been wronged and sitting in that self-victimization and that anger and not being able to move past it. What are your thoughts on closure? I feel like closure is just it's a farce. Like it's a fable. You have to give closure to yourself because you're not always going to get the closure from the person that you're hoping it would come from. You're not always going to get the apology that you feel like you deserve. That person might not even be able to acknowledge what they've done to you and the harm that they've caused. So what are your thoughts as a mental health professional on closure and how important it seems to be to people, specifically women? I really do not hear men talking about closure.
So closure for me, I think that closure, if we're thinking about it from the perspective of closure requires the other party to come into this space and for us to be at peace, for us to have an understanding, for me to get some sort of apology or resolution. If we are defining closure in those terms, you're absolutely right. It is a farce, okay? But closure from the perspective of, so I'm going to date myself, we Gen X, right? So,
Yes.
okay, we can have this conversation. So one of my first jobs out of college was working in an office, and there were these metal file cabinets. These metal file cabinets, if one of the drawers was open, you could not open the other drawer. You had to close one drawer, hear the click, and then you could access the other drawer. That's how I think about closure, is that if you want to access the other parts of your life, if you want to access what's possible, if you want to access your future, you're going to need to close this drawer so that you can access those other pieces. And Closure tends to be a farce for people who want to leave the drawer open until somebody comes in and says I'm sorry, until somebody comes in and gives you the money they owe you, until somebody comes in and says I was wrong for leaving your mama. That may never happen. That may never happen. But if you are willing to close the drawer till it clicks so that you can access those other pieces, I think that closure on your terms is absolutely possible.